Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a TBR video for the month of June. This is going to be by far my most ambitious TBR video that I've made. I have 16 books on the TBR, which if I read them all, will be a record for a single month. The reason I have this many books is because in the summertime I have a lot more free time. I'm no longer teaching every day. I will still be doing some work like lesson plans. I'll still be working with the marching band. I'll still be doing some family events. So I'll still be a little bit busy, but nowhere near as busy as I am during the school year. So I wanted to utilize that time and bank up a lot of books and book reviews for the year. And so I have 16 books. I have one new release book, which is probably the fewest new release books I've had in a while. It's nice to only have one new release book so I can catch up on some old books. One new release book, and then 15 not new releases. I have 6 books that are basically like quick, read them in a day, got them done. And I could even do 1 or 2 of these in a single day. And then I have a couple of mid-length books. I have 5 like mid-length books, and then I have 3 tomes to read. And the tomes will take me a little bit longer, but I'm excited for all of these books. So I'm going to start with the really short books, talk about them real quick, and then I'll move on to the mid-length books and do the big tomes for the end. So starting with short books, one that I should get in like an hour or two is My Hero Academia Volume 4. I read through these back in 2021. I read the first 3, and while I was having fun with it, nobody was watching it on the channel. And I had a much, much smaller channel at the time, so I understand why people didn't watch it as much, but they never really gained traction. There's still, when you sort my videos by popular, the 3 videos for these are almost unilaterally the least popular. But I want to get through more manga, and I've had this on my shelves for, over a year and a half now. So I figured, what, I'll read this. It's a quick, read it in an afternoon real quick. So that's my first book. My second book I'll talk about is At Bertram's Hotel, a mystery novel by Agatha Christie. This is one of her Miss Marple novels. I've never read a Miss Marple novel. I've read lots of Poirot novels, but not Miss Marple, so I'm excited to read this. I love this cover. The yellow makes this stand out compared to her other color covers. And, every book that she's written has been pretty entertaining, so I'm very excited to read this. Next, I have a book called Small Spaces by Catherine Arden. Now, Catherine Arden wrote a trilogy that I was very mixed about. She wrote the Winter Night trilogy. I thought the first book in the trilogy, Bear and the Nightingale, was like on a prose level so impressive, and then on like a entertainment level really weak. And then I read The Girl in the Tower, which was super entertaining. And then I read The Winter of the Witch, which was just not entertaining at all. It was just tough to read. So it was a mixed on it. But she has this quartet of novels that are kind of middle grade horror, kind of like the middle grade novels Mine and Camp Scare that I read earlier this year. So I figured, hey, these are fun romps I'll be able to read. Next, I have a book that I have been told by so many people, 2 in particular, who have been begging me for years, you gotta read this, you gotta read this. And I was always like, maybe one day, but I don't think it's going to be up my alley. But that's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I saw these for really cheap at the used bookstore, and I liked the covers, and I liked the editions, how small they were. And I was like, you know what, I'll buy them, and, this will be a quick read. And I've heard it's very humorous, very fun, and so I'm very interested to read this and talk to the people I know who love this so much. Next, I have 2 Star Trek books on the list. I have Spirit Walk and Old Wounds, I should say, and Enemy of My Enemy, books 1 and 2 in this duology by Christie Golden. Interestingly, Christie Golden's final Star Trek novels that she wrote, these take place after the Homecoming duology, Homecoming and Farther Shore, which are, I think, some of her best Star Trek books. And then right before, these were the books that came out right before the String Theory trilogy and the very big Full Circle novel, which I still think is the best Voyager novel in Star Trek. But this duology I plan to read, and I can knock these out, one right after the other, I think, which will be a lot of fun. Next, I have a Star Wars novel. It is Return to Ord Mantle, the first in a trilogy of books in the Young Jedi Knights. You know, the Young Jedi Knights I've been reading through, you had the first 6 books, which were the Shadow Academy books. Then you had 5 books, which were the Diversity Alliance arc. Both arcs are really well done. Then you have the a trilogy, Return to Ord Mantle, Trouble on Cloud City, and Crisis on Crystal Reef. And I read Trouble on Cloud City, and remember virtually nothing about it. So I'm actually really excited to get into this trilogy and finish out the Young Jedi Knights. I'll need to find another series soon. And now I'll quickly talk about my new release book. The one new release book, it kind of falls into like the mid difficulty books, and that book is the Frugal Wizard's Guide to Medieval England, I believe. That is the new Brandon Sanderson release. The Kickstarter and ebook and audiobook stuff came out a while ago, but the hardcover coming from Tor is releasing in the month of June, and I'm excited because I really enjoyed Tress of the Emerald Sea, and this book is, I think it's a non-Cosmere book, but it just looks like so much fun. Why? How did a fly get in here? Anyway, that book looks like a lot of fun. So I'm very interested in reading that book, and I'll buy it on release day, and I'll read it whenever I have the time. Next, going into my mid-length books, you know, these aren't tomes, but they're decent sized. I have Eyes of Silver by Michael Stackpole. Michael Stackpole wrote one of my favorite standalone fantasy novels, Talion Revenant, and then he also wrote some great Star Wars novels that I've loved. And so I've wanted, listening to him talk about the book business, about the publishing business, is just fascinating. And I've always wanted to read more of his books, and I bought a lot of his books, but they just always get pushed off. So I really want to read this one, so I can. It's another standalone from him. It has an absolutely cheesy cover. This is such a cheesy cover. Even I can't necessarily get behind this cover, but I'm excited to see how he does. It's from Bantam, which is the publisher I've read all of his books from. So and I believe this was one of those '90s books that he was really popular with. Next, I have the next Honor Harrington novel, Flag in Exile, which I've had mixed feelings on previous books. The first book I thought was really good, but not the best. I thought the books 2 and 3 were well done, but just couldn't connect with me. Then I read book 4, which was Field of Dishonor, which I thought was brilliant. Like top tier novel. Felt like John Grisham and C.S. Forester novels had a baby and set them in space, and it was just so much fun to read, so entertaining. And I hope that this book, Flag in Exile, is just as good. Book 5. Next, I have, speaking of John Grisham, I have John Grisham's The Rooster Bar. This will be one of the shorter John Grisham books that I've read. I'm excited to read this because my dad told me he actually thought it was quite entertaining. And I read the premise of it, and it seems a little bit like one of his more lighthearted books, like The Litigators, which was just so much fun. I loved The Litigators. That was so much fun. So I hope I have a lot of fun with this one. Next, I have a YA novel. Not just a YA dystopian novel. What? It is Partials by Dan Wells. Dan Wells has written some great horror novels. The only horror novels really that I've really gotten into. The I Am Not a Serial Killer trilogy. He wrote Extreme Makeover, which is a horrific, disturbing book. And then he also wrote the fun thriller Ghost Station that I read. But I've always wanted to get into his trilogy. And I now own the trilogy, and it starts with Partials. And I'm really excited to get into this book. I read the premise on the end, and I was on the back of the book, and I was like, this is pretty good. Speaking of that crop of writers, the Writing Excuses writers, I have Mary Robinette Kowal's, The Calculating Stars. When I looked at the premise for this book, it seemed like it had some Hidden Figures similarities, kind of, but it's like it's telling the space race, but what if it happened with women? And he actually kind of reminded me of the TV show For All Mankind, which is one of my favorite things on television right now. Cannot wait for season 4. Cannot wait for season 4. And so I have the whole trilogy that I got for pretty cheap. I got the whole trilogy for $10, and they're in quite good condition overall. So I am very excited to read this trilogy, particularly this first book, and see how much I enjoy it. So now we're getting into the tomes, the real big books that I'm going to read this month. The ones that will take me longer to read, but I'm still excited. 2 science fiction books and 1 fantasy book. So the first science fiction book is Mars by Ben Bova. I've asked a lot of people, I want to read Ben Bova books because they just look so darn cool. And where should I start? And I got so many different answers, but I figured, Mars starts the Mars series for him, so why don't I start that? And it seems like a simple enough starting point. And if I don't like it, there's other starting points for Ben Bova novels. So I'll read this, and first of all, I love this cover. Love this cover. Very much reminds me of The Martian, but just feels like that kind of concept of space exploration and conquering and settling new planets. So I'm very interested to read this. I don't actually know much about this book, so I'm interested to see it. I don't know if Ben Bova goes into aliens or if it's strictly human colonizing or what. So, speaking of aliens, we have Citadel, the second book in the Live Free or Die series. I think it's called the Troy Rising series. I read the first one, Live Free or Die, which was so entertaining. Such a different change of pace for me. The first portion of that book, The Maple Syrup War, is just brilliant. John Ringo, haven't read too much by him, but I'm a real big supporter of Bane books, and I thought I'd give this one a go as well. If it's as entertaining as the first book, I'll have a lot of fun. The first book was like a lot of setup and building the space station, so I'm hoping that the second book, shows some action and some fun adventure in this universe. And apparently it ties into Howard Taylor's universe somehow, but anyway, that's Citadel. I almost put book 3, The Hot Gate, on my TBR list by accident, and then I was looking through and I was like, that's not the first book in the trilogy. And so I looked and or the second book in the trilogy, and so I was like, oh good, I might have started with book 3, and that would have been big mistake. The biggest book and the final book on my TBR, that darned fly, get out of here, is the book Ruin by John Gwynne. This is, in the words of Daniel Green, a big boy. That book spank. This is a huge book, part of the Faithful and the Fallen series. I read books 1 and 2, and I really enjoyed them, but I don't remember them. I remember the feeling, I remember a few character aspects, but I actually don't remember that much of this trilogy, or these books. And I believe this is a 4-book series, and I just remember having fun reading these books. So I'm hoping that book 3 is just as fun as book 1 and 2. Hopefully it's more memorable than they were. Because I read book 1 in 2021, read book 2 in 2022, so I read book 3 in 2023. And I just bought book 4, so hopefully I'll get to book 4 in 2023, although there's no guarantee with my track record. So those are all of the books that I'm going to be reading in June 2023, my most massive book haul or TBR yet. What books do you plan to read in 2023? In June 2023? Have you read any of these? Let me know your thoughts on them, and let me know if you think I should, slow down, or if you think I can do more than this. So let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.